Hello and welcome to Unfiltered, featuring a gentleman that I find enduringly fascinating. But as I prepared for this interview, I realised I know very little about.
I like it that way.
I haven't told me your name yet.
No, okay, sorry.
It is, of course, Danny Wallace, whose new book, am I allowed to say that we're Before the Watershed? His new book, Fuck You Very Much, is out now in all good bookshops. Do you know why I find you so fascinating?
No.
Would you like to?
Well, okay.
It's because you've done so much cool stuff in your career, and yet you've never seemed to me to be particularly ambitious. Just on the rare occasions where our paths have crossed, you haven't struck me as one of those people that's constantly banging on doors, hoping one of them will open, or is looking at other people's success and feeling, as Gore Vidal put it, a little bit of you die inside every time someone you know does well.
Yeah.
And yet, and this is probably me wrong, you seem, for at least the best part of 15, 20 years, to have been writing your own ticket.
Ha! Well, sort of. That's kind of the hope and the ideal. And my sort of philosophy to it has always been go where the fun is, right? But try and do the fun well, because then you'll get asked to have fun again. And either the fun will be in the same area, or that fun will go quiet, but there'll be more fun over here. But so long as you try and do all the fun well, then that's really the sort of the dream of it. I've never felt I don't feel comfortable doing one thing.
No, clearly.
I want to do lots of them.
But when did this philosophy kick in? When would you have sort of recognised it as being in development?
I think I've always liked projects, and I think of everything as like a project, whether it's a radio show.
Even since childhood?
Yeah, at school, I wasn't particularly interested in the lessons. That sounds terrible.
Not really.
But I love the projects, right? Okay. So, and it could be the most boring thing in the world. You could have said to me, Danny, today you need to do a project that's going to take you a month on the history of wool in Portugal.
Yeah.
And I have no interest in that whatsoever. However, because it was my thing, my project, I'd try and make it the greatest project that I could. So I would find everything out about Portuguese wool and wool in general, and then Portugal, and then try and just create this thing that was mine. So
self-contained. So if you had to swat up on Portuguese wool and write an essay about it, you're not interested.
No.
But in terms of doing a project with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and something that everyone else can gather around and look at afterwards,
it was more that I felt happy with. So it was less showing it to people and more I've done that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So even then, not even a tiny bit of look at me, look at me, look at me, or look at what I've done. That's what I mean by a lack of ambition and a lack of
I've probably got a bit
ego.
of that.
Well, you must have, because you've achieved so much. But you are, of all the people I've met in this business, you are one of the ones who is least obnoxiously ambitious.
Well, that's good.
I think you are, anyway. We don't know each other that well.
Well, you know, I think ambition is a good thing so long as you're not. I think I have ambition, but I'm not ruthless.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I want to do good stuff, and I want to work, and I've got this kind of Catholic guilt without being Catholic about working.
Oh, have you? The
yeah, because when you work for yourself and you're doing your own kind of projects, you feel like you should be doing something and should be moving forward somehow. But it's to make me happy.
Part of it will be then that because you don't have focused goals, because you enjoy doing stuff that you wouldn't expect to enjoy doing. Or you're back to the projects at school. It's not about the subject of the project, it's about the act of putting the project together.
Yeah, I think you can make anything interesting, and like with a lot of the books, I didn't know where I'd end up.
No,
and I didn't know what I'd learn. But I would think
that's
of it
infectious as well, isn't it? Because that's why people come with you.
I think so. I think of it like a swimming pool, and you jump in, and you swim around, and you see where you should go, and it's like that with the novels. I don't have an end. I don't know how it's going to end. Because I always thought that was quite a good thing. Lots of writers have different techniques, and so they would, you go to people's houses and they've got a whole board with every single scene that's going to happen. And for me, it was always the beginning. It's the exciting idea with everything that links everything together. Is it's about that initial idea, and then the fun bit is where can this go? What should it be, and where could it go? And that's what I try and do.
What was home like then? Why do you think? Was there anything at home that would explain your passion for project
home was quiet. I'm an only child, so I lived in a sort of quite grown-up world. I had to make friends quickly because I didn't have brothers and sisters to sort of rely on. We moved around a lot, so I had to keep doing that. So I think that's probably informed what I do quite a bit as well, because it involves making friends with people, whether that's on the radio and making friends with listeners, or whether that's in books. I always try and write in a way that it's like I tell you the story in the way that I would tell you the story if we were down the pub together. So when someone approaches me, as happened this morning, a fella came up and he said, I've read your books. And then he told me which one in particular he had read. And because I knew how I'd told that story to him, it felt like I already knew him. It felt like we had a connection. It felt like we had sat down and had that chat already. So you feel like you're making friends a lot.
And the radio's the same.
Radio's the same.
That connection. You love radio, don't you?
I love radio. Yeah. I love radio. It's writing and radio for me.
So back to childhood and school and the emerging notion that these enthusiasms and passions that you had could somehow be a career. Was there a moment where you kind of thought, am I going to be able to avoid the rat race? Am I going to be able not to put on a suit and go to work? Am I going to be able to have fun
for a while, that was all I wanted, was to be in an office. Because I got into Sega and like Sonic the Hedgehog and Golden Axe. It never occurred to me. And like my neighbour had one and I wasn't interested at all. I wanted to go out and play. But suddenly we were in a new town and I didn't have that many friends yet. And I remembered my mate's gaming thing and I was like, that would be good to have.
Okay.
And so I managed to get one.
Mega Drive.
A Mega Drive. Yeah. And I played it. But again, it was that thing of what else can I do with this? And work experience at school was coming up. And I was offered the chance to dig ditches in a garden centre or refile files in an accountant's office, neither of which screamed, pick me. And I knew that there was a magazine in my town that did Sega stuff, Sega Power. And I asked them. I sort of inveigled my way. And I just.
How old are you now, roughly?
I'm about 13, 14.
Okay.
Something like that. And I managed to get in, and I just made myself indispensable. And I was doing all the stuff that I would have done at the accountant's office, refiling things and just making cups of tea for people who already had them and all this kind of stuff. And one day a reviewer got ill, and they said, "Do you want to have a crack at writing a review?" And I stayed up as late as I could playing this game to death. It was not a good game. And in those days, all you had to do to write a review was you had to mention parallax scrolling, which I still don't know what it is. And then you'd give it a sort of a middle, sort of a 65%.
Yeah.
And you'd say, try before you buy.
Right.
So it's just, you just
cover your ass.
Yeah.
You're cool.
But I was really going for it with this one. And I got taken to the editor's office and I thought he was going to say, we can't run this. And he said, do you want a job? And so I had this like...
This is so it starts at 14, because I've often looked at you and thought, you bastard. How did you land that, and how did you land this? And you were, because I reviewed video games for the Daily Mail in my 30s, but that was not nearly it's not nearly as exciting.
Oh, it was great for a teenager getting
14
free games.
years old, and you can have your pick.
Yeah,
you
get your games, and also I was part of like a brother and sisterhood there of these people who were, to me, seemed proper grown-ups,
yes,
but were straight out of university. They was 23, 24, working on magazines where the circulation was hundreds of thousands, and they looked after me, and I really felt like I want to be one of them. And then I ended up working in an office and realised,
what office? Well, working in not that office.
No, years later, that was I was at the BBC as a
you
comedy...
jumped ahead. What about being a staff writer at Total magazine?
Okay,
and then you started your own comedy magazine called Comedy Review. So already you're this astonishing sort of polymath. But also, do you have a fear of rejection?
I think we all do, but it's how you deal with it. I mean, most of my job is rejection.
Yes, but that's what I mean. Makes me think you don't have a fear of it.
I don't think I do have a fear of it, because the next idea is an idea away.
That's a lovely psychological condition to have, isn't it? Where you just think it doesn't matter if this one doesn't work out because something else. Because some people are crushed for 6 months every time they get told no.
Yeah, and it can add up. It's added up on lots of my friends who do similar things, and it has weighed down on them and made them, as you get older, feel, I guess, a bit crushed by it.
And because for everything that you get off the ground, there are half a dozen projects that.
Yeah, at least, at least. But that's why it's good to do as many different things as possible.
Yeah, I get that.
Because you can go, well, that's not working, let's do this.
It says you started Comedy Review, but you were associate editor as well, and it closed after 5 issues.
Yeah, it did. We wanted to start. I was working on this. I took a year out. I was going to get university, but I didn't know what I was going to do.
Fair enough.
If I hadn't taken the year out, I would have ended up doing geography at Cardiff.
Yes.
I have no interest in geography. I got
Cardiff's very nice.
Cardiff's lovely. I got I did well in a project at geography because it was a
bloody project. It was at Oxbow Lake.
It was about Midford Brook. It was about Midford Brook, a brook that no one's heard of.
Still proud.
Yeah, I did very well. Did very well. But that tricked me into thinking, oh, maybe I should do geography.
Right.
No, absolutely not. It would have been a disaster.
You had done an A-level. You hadn't just.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So I took a year out. I got a job on. It was a Nintendo magazine. And then we wanted to start a comedy magazine because we were into comedy. I grew up just listening to comedy rather than music.
Who were your favourite?
I would listen to Faulty Towers kind of on a loop as I went to bed.
Yeah.
The audiobooks were great because all the physical
these are on
comedy,
tapes.
They're on cassette, yeah. And all the physical comedy had to be described by Andrew Sachs in the character of Manuel.
No, really?
Now he's hitting me on the head.
I didn't know that. That's double funny.
Yeah. Tom Lehrer.
Yes, of course.
I was hugely into him. And then a friend gave me a tape at school of On the Hour. And I had no idea that radio comedy could be that. I didn't know you could do that. It was this, spoof news show, it, re-editing stuff, a different type of humour, some of the greatest new performers at that stage.
We've had Amanda Iannucci's done this, done Unfiltered, and a couple of other people who like Richard Herring was involved in some of the early incarnations. And it is odd, and it's obviously not planned. How many of the people that we've done on Unfiltered have some sort of either connection to or enthusiasm for that show?
It was a game
sense
changer.
that it was a real game changer.
Oh, it was a huge game changer.
Why?
Because it came from, it was so not Radio 4.
Yes.
It came from a completely different angle. It was beautifully made, beautifully edited, 1,000 ideas. You felt part of something.
You did, didn't you?
Because you knew that it was on the hour.
Yeah, you're in on it. Areas.
And you imagined people tuning in and hearing it for the first. You wanted to share it. It was the first Radio 4 comedy I wanted to share with people. And that got me into lots more things and watching stand-ups and stand-ups would come. I was living in Bath at that point, and stand-ups would come to the little comedy club, and I'd go every week and drag my friends if I could, and had life-changing moments there, like seeing Tim Vine, who I'd never heard of, for the first time come out, and it was the first. When you're so in pain from laughing, and usually when you have that with your friends, there's going to come a point where you stop laughing. But when it's a comedian as good as Tim Vine, and he's got another 15 minutes,
absolutely.
and you're hurting, then moments like that made me so excited. John Shuttleworth was my first gig that I went to see, where I had my first pint at the same night. So comedy had this real sort of... my life is full of sort of moments where those things matter and those people matter.
And was there a burgeoning sense that you could do it, or you would want to do it, or were you always happy in the audience?
I think that there would have been 2 or 3 times in my life that would have been the right time for me to do stand-up. However, they all coincided with being the worst time. So after Comedy Review folded, it was this magazine, and we tried to take a serious look at comedy, but it was overpriced. It wasn't stocked in many places. It was doomed.
Apart from that,
the
recipe
doomed for failure. And right after that would have been a great time to do it. Yeah. However, I'd just been a guy writing about comedy, and I think that you need a couple of years to be accepted. And I think that people would. I felt very strongly that people would think, "Oh yeah, you think you can do it?"
Of course.
And B, would sort of want me to fail.
Yeah. It's an astonishing relationship between the comedian and the critics, because even though to outsiders, comedy critics aren't, I mean, in the journalistic hierarchy, they're not very important. But a comic who got a 2-star review eight years ago at Edinburgh will remember the name and the star sign of the critic that did it. And so, and then occasionally they have had a go at it themselves. I think one of the Chortle writers maybe had a go at Edinburgh, or certainly one of the quite well-known critics, and they were just praying for him to die on his own.
Really? Yeah, well, exactly. That's it. And I didn't want that.
No, I understand.
I really didn't want that. And yeah, it's and I was too nice as well.
Do you know? Reviews. I was about to say
it was very much 65% try before you buy.
Yes,
it was that again. The only thing that was missing was parallax scrolling from my reviews. But I just loved it. I just loved that world, and and then went to university.
Westminster to study media.
Media.
This was at a time when there weren't that many. You're only 4 years younger than me, and but when I was contemplating universities, media. My dad was a journalist. Media was still something that an old school journalist would laugh at the idea of you studying it. There weren't many courses around then. Younger viewers will find this hard to believe.
No, absolutely. It was. They were laughed at, and I was going to a former poly who initially rejected me. Because they said that I hadn't shown enough interest in the media. I was like, I just launched a magazine. You just phoned me. I'm on deadline. It was literally
What
that.
were they expecting you to do?
The reason for it was part of it. They initially went, yeah, come in, and then they said. Oh, you've just got to write a little 200-word thing to show us that you understand things, and it has to be in the style of a columnist. And I took that to mean, you understand the media and la la la. So I wrote this thing in quite a weird Will Self thing, and it had to be about your favourite memory. And I was saying, the weird thing about memories is that the most important thing that's ever happened to me is the one thing I can't remember, which is being born, and la la la. And I was trying to show a little something, and they said, no. Well, we actually wanted to find out what your favourite memory was.
Right.
And so I had to write another one about passing my driving test, and they went, great, you're in. so that's how I got in.
And what do you study? You do 3 years there.
Yeah, the last year...
It's still a mystery to me what you do for 3 years.
It's a lot of theory, but then again, it's the project. Right. I wanted to know how to make the ideas in my head real.
Okay.
And they've got all the equipment, right? They had the best equipment. And so if I knew how to make a radio show, then suddenly all my ideas for radio shows I could try and make like an On the Hour.
Right.
I could bring those influences in. They had the TV studio, and I wasn't particularly interested in that because I wanted things that I could make.
Yes.
And that's radio, because you don't need as many people.
Of course.
You can sit down and you can do it yourself.
So that's really interesting, because a lot of people with media ambitions are quite amorphous, but they can't really tell you what or why they want it. They just know that they want to be in the media. Because of our adult life, it's become a really cool thing to do, really cool thing to be. You're coming at it from exactly the opposite end. You want to get the tools to create the stuff that you already know you want to create.
Yeah. I didn't care about, lectures about semantics and all that. I just wanted to get back and come up with an idea and be able to learn how to make it. And so I was never happier than when it was like, all right, off you go for 3 weeks. Now you're going to make a documentary. What are you going to make it about? And then I go off and do it.
Were you any good?
Well, I hope so. I remember the documentary I made. I managed to, because I was sort of keeping things going, while I was at university, so I didn't have to work an hour price. Or at the bar. I could still write for people, and so I'd get weird requests that would come in, and I got asked if I'd go and spend a couple of nights in a haunted house, and be sort of the man on the street, and kind of essentially just be like, I'm terrified the whole time. And it was supposed to just be us in a place. And what happened instead was lots of very odd, inexplicable things started happening at the stroke of midnight.
Shut up.
No, I will not shut up. And I was there to record it all. And what starts off as quite a fun, light-hearted documentary, only over 20 minutes, turns into something that's actually quite scary. And it taught me how to use silence and the power of silence, which is something you use very well. You do in your job. Those moments that can become much more powerful if you just leave it be. Just give it a moment, let it sink in that horrible phrase. And so I would learn all that kind of stuff. And then the last year was advanced radio, and that was all kind of...
That's your choice. You choose your module for the
and
last
you get,
year.
But they ran it brilliantly, because it would be like, right, we're going to do a live week on the radio. So we're going to actually create these programs. The news has to come in. There's a news team. They have to compete with actual national news teams. So we'd send people down to the Old Bailey.
Really?
And they ended up getting brilliant quotes. Oh, it was great. And Chris Smith from Radio 1 would come in and run the whole thing so that we'd have all our programming. And Piers Plowright, the documentary maker, would come in and he'd do documentaries. And so it was always a puzzle to me that media got these bad reps.
Well, I can see why. I feel stupid now for suggesting...
Well, no, my boss at the magazine, he said, I would not employ you.
No.
He said, if you tried to come back after this course, I would not employ you.
It would actually make you worse.
Yeah. But I was just like, I've got to do it. I've got to do it.
And no regrets at all?
None.
So, again, you're already this... Because I always think of people of having a fixed goal, and then sometimes by accident they end up finding enormous fulfillment doing something different from the fixed goal. But you're already a plate spinner at this point. You're already seeing. I mean, the fancy word is a portfolio career these days. But then, it was quite odd to be confident enough to think, well, I can do a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of the other.
Well, the only way to do stuff is to do stuff, and to give it a go. If it's something that you want to do and it's exciting and the opportunity's there, then you should jump in.
So, and obviously, if you're getting commissioned to do stuff, you're still doing a bit. Is networking the right word? Did you put yourself out there?
No, I wouldn't. I find that kind of thing very awkward.
Yes.
But weirdly, it did help me in the sort of the next step, but not because I meant to.
Right.
So I finished my course, and Edinburgh was happening, the Edinburgh Festival, and I was asked to go and be a judge on the Perrier Awards.
Why? So you've done it again because of the magazine?
Because at that stage, I'd started doing a bit for Melody Maker magazine.
Okay.
And that was because I'd landed an interview with someone, I had loads of extra material, and I thought I'd quite like to do something for Melody Maker. And
so you've done the interview as part of your studies?
I've done the interview for another newspaper or something like that.
Okay. So I was measuring bloody inside legs at this point in my career, and I was thinking, I'm never going to get commissioned to do anything, and you go, I can't do that, I'm too busy doing my haunted house documentary, and then I'm going to do my massive Melody Maker cover piece.
Well, the Melody Maker was very small.
Did you realise at the time that you were winning, or did it just because you come across very much as just, well, yes, I'm just muddling along and everything that's happening is wonderful.
I just want to do stuff, and if there's stuff to be done,
you make it sound so matter of fact.
Well, I guess so, but I mean. But then there's a certain amount of luck that has to come into it as well.
For sure, yes.
So, like, one of the lucky things that happened was I did the Perrier Awards, and that was very much because they had people from The Guardian, The Independent.
So you're writing, you're on the scene.
Yeah, but they wanted someone to represent the youth, and Melody Maker represented the youth.
Yes.
And also on the panel of judges was this guy who became a very important figure in my life, but I didn't know at that point. And his name was John Pigeon. And he was an editor at the BBC, which I thought at that stage, because I'd been doing some editing, digital editing, I thought he was an editor.
With razor blades?
Yeah. In fact, he was in charge of BBC radio comedy.
Yes.
And I had just applied for a job, a traineeship at BBC radio comedy. And I'd got on really well with John. But when I found out that I'd applied for a job with him, I did everything I could to avoid him for the rest of the festival.
Nervousness or just...
I didn't want him to think that I was trying to be his mate.
Oh, I love that dynamic.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course I do.
I didn't want him to look back at our interactions and think, what if he was only being friendly because of this?
Yeah, of course.
Whereas I felt I'd made a friend.
Oh,
and so he would like...
Caitlin Moran was here a few weeks ago, and she had a similar experience, but she dealt with it when she was interviewing lots of famous rock stars by being really, really rude to them, because she didn't want them to think she was trying too hard to be their friend.
Oh, God.
So you went for the complete avoidance.
I'm just like, I can't, I'm not going to be...
He probably felt that he'd offended you.
I think maybe he did. He was like, it's Danny's turn. What's happened there? But anyway, I ended up going in for an interview, and I got the job, and all I wanted to do then was... as a trainee was make shows with the people that I knew on the scene, who were friends who I thought were extraordinarily talented.
Funny people.
Yeah, but who weren't known at that stage, really. So Ross Noble and the Boosh, Mighty Boosh.
You produced the original... So again, I didn't know all this stuff until I started digging in for today. You produced the Mighty Boosh radio show.
Yeah, which was the first thing that they'd sort of put out there. I'd seen the Boosh in a room above a pub with 12 other people.
Gosh.
And I remember just years later being at Brixton Academy, and there were thousands of them, and they were all dressed as Noel and Julian. And just thinking back to all those things. But it wouldn't have happened without this guy, John Pigeon.
Okay.
Because we wanted to make the Boosh, and we went to Radio 4 and said, it's the Boosh, right? We want to do it. And they wrote back and word for word said, the Mighty Boosh are 1 million miles away from what we want on Radio 4. So that's quite a... quite a no. Seems
a million
miles. It's a long way. And but John, I was a bit down about it, and John was like, "Well, do you know what? Well, I'm sure we can do something." So he found some money, and we thought we're going to make it for local radio, right? So we ended up BBC local radio, London, right?
But that didn't the day-to-day start, not the day on the hour start on BBC.
I think
Radio London, didn't it?
GLR, didn't it?
So yeah, that's it.
Is that how that?
I think so, because Chris Morris was there doing a show, and him and Yanucci became friends. It's quite depressing because that notion of that kind of fertile backwater wouldn't exist now, really, would it?
No, I don't think so.
Too corporatised, but you got the money, you got to make the show, albeit for local BBC.
Yeah, and here was the thing, right? So I tried to do it in a studio with Noel and Julian, and it wasn't quite firing because they need a lot of space and they want to keep going and that. So we moved it to a disused disco in Shoreditch, and there was a back room that looked like this, and it smelled of foxes.
Oh, lovely.
And over there was, in another room, was a man running a scam or a junk mail. It was like a dozen fax machines. This is dates it, sending out spam faxes all over the world.
Seriously?
Yeah, and there was a dog that would just walk around called Red, and there was an American model on roller skates. It was really odd. But so we started to make the show in this little thing, a little room, and Noel built a soundproof studio out of velvet and stuffed animals. It was the most Boosh thing that could have happened. And we delivered it, and it went out. It went out on BBC London at midday on a Saturday, right, when all the largely male listenership at that point wanted to do was listen to football.
Football, isn't it, on Saturdays?
So it's like, we're just going to take a half-hour break from talking about the football to have the whimsical zoo-based adventures of Howard Moon and Vince Noir. And it was a disaster. They were furious.
Complaints.
Going, why have you done this?
Ringing off the hook. All kind of,
What have you put a zoo on for?
Yes.
I don't get it. But then Radio 4 heard it and went, do you know what, actually, this would work.
A million miles.
Yeah,
disappeared,
and they put it on.
When you see them with 12 other people in a room above a pub, I was going to ask you a sort of highfalutin question, but if I've followed you properly, you're just going to go by what makes you wet yourself, right? You're not looking for a philosophical explanation of why that's funny and that. You know, if you have confidence that if it makes you wet yourself, then it would be popular if you brought it to a wider audience.
You're looking for a voice, you know, and the voice is. That's what people look for in everything. In America, sitcoms are all about finding a unique voice. Stand-up, Netflix specials are all about the unique voice. The funny comes with it. But then you have people now doing so well, like Hannah Gadsby, who is someone not many people had heard of a few months ago, has done a special on Netflix, which all the American comics are going, this is incredible.
Wow.
And it's all because of her position, her voice, and what she's saying. And it can be saying something important and highfalutin, or it can just be a unique voice and a unique way of bringing laughs to the table. And the Boosh did that from day one.
Yes.
They were it's the classic double act in a lot of ways, isn't it? One person trying to do something serious and the other one going, what are you doing?
It's Morecambe and Myers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or the other one doing something silly and the serious one going, what are you up to? And then it all comes, that's all any of these things
Classic
are.
dynamic.
But it's brilliant.
It is. Ross Noble as well, who you produce. Ross Noble Goes Global again. Another example of someone with a unique voice.
The great thing about Ross is, and I've travelled all over the world with him, and I forget sometimes how good he is, which I tell him as a compliment, but he takes as an insult. But I see him walk out onto a stage, and we've been walking around. We'd walked around, like, say, Shanghai. We did a show where we travelled around the world, and we walked around Shanghai, and I'd like set him little things. So I'd just be like, let's just follow that fella for a while, and you just commentate on him, and we'll see where it leads us. And then suddenly he's on a stage, and he's talking about following this guy in a brilliant, imaginative, original way that he's just got a bunch of strangers in the palm of his hands. And he'll come off stage and he'll go, did I miss anything? And I'll go, you could say something about, like, I don't know, the chocolates. And he'll walk back out and do a 10-minute encore just about the chocolates.
Wow.
And his leg starts to go after a couple of days if he's not gigged.
Really?
He's got that need to do the next gig, and he feels very uncomfortable if he doesn't do it.
Which you don't have. You don't have a need, and you don't, at this point, you haven't found a voice of your own.
For stand-up at that stage?
For anything, really.
For anything.
Because your voice comes through in your books, it comes through in all the work that you've done, but you're at the moment, you're a facilitator of other people's voices.
Yeah.
Were you aware of that?
Yeah.
Right.
I was. And I liked that in some ways.
You worked on Dead Ringers as well.
I did.
Yeah.
Which wasn't as appealing.
No.
It was more, I wanted to work with the people
You wanted
I wanted
a project.
Yeah. Didn't I? Yeah, I wanted projects. Yeah. I wanted to go, this is them and this is what we can do, and let's make their project. And eventually I got to the point a little while later where I was like, I'm giving away all my ideas.
Right.
And I'd quite like to do some stuff. I'd quite like to do my own things.
Have your name on the door, as it were.
Have my name on the door, have the control over it. Because obviously when you're facilitating other people's stuff, if you're a good producer, I think then you'll help them get to the best stuff. But really, the decision should be theirs.
Yes, I see.
Because you have to have that respect. There's a lot of people who don't have that respect for comics.
Yeah.
And they will tell them what's funny.
Right.
And it's like, well, hang on, they know what's funny. Let's let them try it at least. And if it doesn't work, fine, you can look great by having told them, but at least they've tried it, because it might be a stormer.
And it's their instincts that they rely on when they're actually standing in front of 12 people in a pub, or 12,000 at Wembley Arena.
And it's their name on the door.
Do you envy other people's talent?
Do I envy other people's talent? I don't think I envy it.
Back then, would you look at
Noel
Fielding and think, oh man, I wish I was up there doing that?
I don't think I thought that, because I couldn't do what they do.
Bad example.
Or like Ross.
Yeah. Okay.
I admire what they do. I think there are some people who are beyond envy because they're so good at what they do, and if they're nice with it, then
and they often are, aren't they?
And
they often are insecure because they know they're not that brilliant.
Yeah, it really is. Which I think it plays into wider culture as well.
It definitely does.
I
like that. So it's growing inside you, this idea that you want to do your own stuff. But again, to go back to where I started, it's not driven by ego or anything that we refer to on Unfiltered as the look at me gene, because the first guest was Russell Brand, who is almost like 100% look at me gene. And I don't get any of that from you, but you do at this point. There is a sense of wanting to, as you say, keep your own ideas and maybe do things in your own image.
And also just wanting to get on with it. I've always got that feeling that I just want to get on with it. I just want to crack on. And if I'm not cracking on with it, if I'm not getting on with something, if I'm standing still, or if I just see myself in a position where if I stayed at the BBC, there would just be more and more projects coming in that I'm not that into.
Right.
That I'd try and do a good job at, but I would just be stuck.
So restlessness.
Yeah.
A sort of restlessness. And this is roughly around the time you and Dave Gorman came to public prominence.
Yeah.
And that, although it was his name on the project, that, looking back, was yours as well.
Well, it's his. It was
your idea.
Well, it was the bet in a sense, but Dave,
the bet was that he couldn't find 54 people in the world with the same name as him. Yeah,
and I had to sort of play a character in that I'm not enjoying this.
Yeah,
but of course I was. It was enjoyable because it was a project and it was pushing something forward. It was a collection. It was going out, meeting these people, adding them to a collection of men all called Dave Gorman, and telling a story. And those are all the things that I've always liked to do. I used to do when I was back on the magazines. I used to do just weird things, just little projects for myself. There was one very long, boring summer when I was a teenager, and I decided to see if I could write the most boring joke I could, to see what I could do with it. Right? So I wrote this joke, and the joke was. Inspector Poirot says, it's a Poirot joke. Inspector Poirot says, there's something fishy about this case. To which Captain Haddock replies, that's because I'm a fish. Now, that doesn't work on any level, right? Poirot is saying this, but then he's teamed up with Captain Haddock, but he's from Tintin, so there's a Belgian connection. But he's animated, and he's not a fish, but he's just said he is. Doesn't work. So I sent this off, and I just said underneath, please do not steal this joke, or I'll find out and report you. And I put in like a stamped addressed envelope to try and get some replies. Hallmark Cards wrote back and said they were very impressed with the standard of my work. But there were no openings at present. I think it got read out on the radio. Richard Whiteley wrote back to me, furious.
Really?
Yeah. He just went, your joke is lousy. underlined. And he was so disgusted by it, he wrote a PS and just went, PS, for my reply, I've used my own envelope. He wouldn't even use my envelope. But the best reply I got, and the thing that made me, and I missed it because I lost it, and I lost it for 20 years. I knew I'd got a reply from Ronnie Barker.
Oh, wow.
And I remembered that there was something really funny about it. And it was only just a few weeks ago that I was unpacking some boxes and I found the reply from Ronnie Barker. And it just went, there's a load of stuff, very nice stuff. And then him just kind of going, I've retired from showbiz, not in the market for new material. And he said, but I can tell you, brackets, and this is a promise, close brackets, I will never use your joke, not even in private conversation.
That sounds lovely, isn't it?
So I was always keen on doing these little things, these
entirely
little
for your own amusement.
Entirely for my own amusement.
But with this kind of contagion to it, in the sense that it could catch. Lots of people could join in, but that isn't where you get your fulfillment from, necessarily.
Not necessarily, but it was just creating a moment.
Yeah, that's really, really
and having
lovely.
A story. You know, I like having stories about stuff.
So the Dave Gorman thing goes nuts, probably bigger than any of you expected.
Yeah.
And you then presumably start getting recognised a bit. You have a degree of celebrity. Do you enjoy that side of things?
I enjoy it to a point. I'm much more comfortable with people who have maybe read something,
yes,
or listened to the radio,
rather than just clocked you. They've got a connection with one of the stories that you told.
Yeah, exactly. Because for a while, I was doing a whole bunch of telly that I sort of fell out of love with because they weren't. What
sort of stuff were you doing?
I ended up. It moved very, very quickly.
Yeah, that's right.
It was. What was first? I ended up doing some documentary stuff, and then I did a documentary where I started my own country, which I very much enjoyed doing because that was a project. And then all these offers came in that it felt like I should try and have a go at.
Yes.
So before I knew it, it was like I'm walking out at TV Centre, and hosting a live show on BBC One on a Saturday night.
Yes.
Which felt like things I should do. But they weren't things I think I would ever have sat down and gone, I really want to do that,
And they weren't projects.
And I wasn't in control.
You're on a conveyor belt.
You're on a conveyor belt.
Albeit that these are glittering prizes that you're landing that most people in the business would give their eye teeth for.
Yeah.
You kind of didn't...
It wasn't me. It felt like a different version of me doing it.
Okay.
It felt like there's me in the books and on the radio, and then there was like a presenter.
Showbiz, Danny.
Yeah, and I didn't feel comfortable sort of in that role.
Okay.
So when
very confident that, because you'd be in your early 30s by now, or if that, late 20s, early 30s. So again, that temptation is to rush through any door that's ajar because it's so hard to get a career in this game, and yet you were already wise enough. You're quite an old soul, do you think?
Well, but it's not that. I don't want to make it seem like it was. I just went right. I'm not doing.
No. But you were wise enough to recognise the relationship between fulfillment and work, rather than thinking that one, just getting the result, getting the gig was enough to make you happy.
I think so, because also it is that thing of when suddenly you're on when people are coming up to you on the street or on trains or whatever, it's. If it's just because they've seen you on telly, that's not. They haven't even seen me. Do you know what I mean? They've not seen the real. So it's fake. It's weird.
It's hollow.
It's hollow.
I remember seeing Neil Hamilton and his wife get mobbed by school children once because they'd been on a reality television show.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about. Because you want to say, if you knew anything about these people, you would not be excited.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd be crossing the road to avoid them.
You would, yeah. But he's winning about with his dank memes.
With his dank memes.
Of late.
But so it's the what you want to be admired for the work. Admired is not a word you're going to be comfortable with. You want people to like the work, and if as a result of liking the work they want to like you, that's cool. But if they're liking you just because they've seen you in a cheese advert, that's not. Did you ever do any adverts?
No, I haven't done any advert. I've done some sort of. If it's an imaginative idea, I sometimes get drawn to it.
Okay,
but they've always been disasters.
So you weren't mad for this. You were never going to become Mr. Saturday Night.
No.
You realised that yourself. Even if the doors had opened up, you probably wouldn't have rushed through them.
I think that I would have probably. I think to a certain extent, I could have just kept going a bit.
Yeah.
But I started saying no more, and
it's a huge moment when you start saying no to stuff.
But I remember being in the shower, and at the time I was doing like a big BBC One reality show and some, so as in presenting it, and some other stuff, and there's another thing coming in. And I remember thinking, if that goes away, that's fine.
Right.
And I had that real thought, and weirdly, it took a lot of pressure off me.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I was sort of keeping it going because I felt like I kind of had to.
Like a treadmill.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's come in, so I better.
Yeah, but you thought no.
Well, I just thought
quite liberating.
Yeah, I was just like, I've got other stuff going on.
And the other stuff, as everyone who's followed us this far is going to realise, is the stuff that you get to make yourself.
Yeah.
So, and that is what you earn now. You earn the cachet to say, can I have a go at this? And people would give you money to go off and do it. So what came first in that period? Because the chronology's a bit mixed up. Was it Join Me or Yes Man? Join Me came before Yes Man, but was Join Me before or after you'd achieved this kind of...
Join Me was right before.
Yeah.
So Join Me sort of led into it, and Join Me led to my first bit of telly.
And it was a bit like the joke, the rubbish Poirot joke, wasn't it? You did a thing. You put an advert in a classified magazine, inviting people to join you.
Yep.
But so you had no idea whether that was going to go anywhere at all. So you're doing it again to amuse Danny Wallace. You're not doing it to notice me. You're just saying, this would be funny. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And
what happened?
Well, a lot of stuff happened, and it was just about keeping that idea going. So I wanted to see whether people would join something without knowing who they were joining, or what they were joining, or why they were joining, or even what joining meant. And I didn't know either. And so I asked them to send a passport photo to my address. And the idea of the passport photo was, weirdly, I mean, this is pre-Facebook, pre-Twitter, but now we're in a world where you can join anything, you can follow anyone, you can sign a petition, you can do any of this stuff, and it's sort of devalued that all those things in a sense, joining something. Because
the effort, the exercise of joining has become...
You're not really losing anything, you're just clicking a button. And I wanted people to send me a passport photo because it showed trust in the unknown, it showed effort. If someone was going to dig out a passport photo or have one taken and then send it to someone and they don't know who it is, that says something about that person. It shows that they're up for something. And imagine what we could achieve if we wanted to achieve something. And so I began, and I got my first joinee, as I called them. He was a fellow called Jonesy. And Jonesy sent me a menu for his local Indian, said, I recommend the Dansak. So I went there and I had the Dansak, and I was like, this is a great... I think I was telling myself that this is the best curry I've ever had. And I wanted to meet him, and he wanted to meet me. And so I wrote him a letter, and I wanted to find out why he had joined. Yeah, right? That's all I wanted to find out, why he had joined, so I could expand that. I sort of forgot that he might have questions. Sure. Like what have I joined?
Yes.
So we meet up in a pub in London, and my mate Ian's going, don't go meet with him because he's clearly going to kill you.
Yeah, of course.
And Jonesy's mate Dave was going, don't go meet with him because he's clearly going to kill you. Yeah. And we sit there, two quite scared men, and we have this discussion, and he's asking me these questions, and I'm trying to keep his interest, but without answering him,
without admitting that there's nothing.
Yeah,
right.
So he's going, so what is this? Join Me, and I'm going, well, it's about people joining together. People always joining, and he's like, well, how many people? And I go, numbers. It's not about numbers of people. It's about quality. He's like, yeah, but a ballpark. And I go, again, you're not a number. You're a man. And eventually, I have to tell him, and I just go, it's just you. It's two. And he's like, I can see him looking at me going, including, and he realizes that he's joined the worst club in the world with possibly a psychopath. But him being him, he just took a sip of his pint and he just went, do I get a badge or something?
Oh, cool beans.
And then his flatmate joined, and it spiraled, and then I kept it going. And to cut a long story very short, tens of thousands of people from all over the world joined and continue to join to this day. And
you still do Carmageddon, and
we still do big meetups because the idea became, all right, let's do good in the world. So every Friday became a Good Friday.
And this was when the Random Acts of Kindness side spreading.
Exactly.
So the internet was it? Did the internet sort of come along and harness some of this enthusiasm, or was it all done by word
I set up a forum, which is all you could really do
in those days.
But then
Random Acts, because I remember this. I remember Random Acts of Kindness. And this is when you were no longer Dave's sidekick or whatever the word you prefer is. This is when you and so your first real foray into Danny, your own stuff, as opposed to presenting other people's stuff, was actually quite a lot to do with altruism, which follows through almost all the rest of the work.
I think so, yeah. I think
the notion that people should be nicer to each other.
People should be nicer, and there are things you can do, one simple thing in every life that can change everything.
Where does that come from? You're not religious, or...
No.
Spiritual?
I think I just believe in...
Apart from the ghosts.
Apart from the ghosts. I believe in people, you know. I think people are fundamentally good, and I think that, you know, my parents probably have a lot to do with that. I never saw my parents be rude to anyone, ever. I only ever saw them be nice.
Right.
I only ever saw my dad deal with other men's aggression in a very calm and polite and nice way.
Yes.
So I think that probably affected me quite deeply.
Clearly.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of affirmative side to your personality as well, which emerged in the next project, which was Yes Man.
Yeah, Yes Man, yeah.
It always reminded me slightly of The Dice Man, didn't it? It was a Luke Reinhardt book, but you, instead of running the risk of doing vile things, well, you did run the risk of doing, I suppose.
Oh, I ran the risk of everything, I mean,
so this was saying yes to everything for 6 months.
Yeah, the Dice Man is fantastic. He would have 6 choices, and he would get to decide the choices. I would have one choice and no dice, which is just to say yes. So the answer is already yes, and it's going to be yes the whole way. And it's going to be yes to favours and requests and suggestions. And it's funny that you mentioned Luke Reinhardt there. George Cockcroft is his real name.
Is it?
He got in touch with me one day.
No way.
And so I went to New York to meet him, and I spent a couple of days with him. And he was in his 80s at the time. And, you know, in he walked to this bar. A huge sort of cowboy-looking man with a big sort of cowboy black hat, all dressed in black, and we sat there and we just got hammered in this bar in upstate New York.
How cool! And
at one point, he was like, "I want you to see this view," and so we went outside and realised that we'd been drinking, and I suddenly realised he wanted to drive me somewhere.
Right.
There's that thing of, well, that's illegal, but I'm the Yes Man and he's the Dice Man. So what are we going to do here? And I was like, you've got very slow, and so we just went down this sort of abandoned thing. And he missed the turning, and he went, I've not missed that turning in 30 years. I was like, okay, this does not bode well. So he turned the car around, and he missed it again. And so we had to turn it around again. Now he hit a small wall that he didn't see, and then we now made the turning, but we were approaching a small squirrel that was in the middle of the road, and I was going, George, and thunk, and he just killed a squirrel. And I felt terrible, and I said, I think we've just killed a squirrel. And he just went, I don't care. And that was the difference between the Yes Man
and the Dice Man.
Wow. But in real life, is that I really don't want to do that. But I guess we have. And he's like, I couldn't give a shit either way.
How fantastic.
Yeah.
And other people followed your lead?
In terms of...
On Yes Man, other people started saying yes.
Oh, yeah. I get
point.
some of the... with Yes Man, I get some of the most amazing letters from people who've read it and then made a change in their life. And ended up married.
Well, you ended up married as a result of Yes Man.
Yeah, certainly through making it, being a different person in a sense, or just being that guy who just gets out there. I think we all like those people who, when we say, "Are you coming to this party?" and they go, "Yeah," when they turn up, it means something.
Fun Bobby.
Fun Bobby's the name of everybody from now on. So no, Yes Man has a special place in my life. But Join Me really does as well, because
they're companion pieces, aren't they?
Yeah, I would say.
So in that sense, and then do you put pressure on yourself? What am I going to come up with next? Because this now is, albeit that you've still got several plates spinning. We haven't even mentioned the fact that you're in Assassin's Creed, have we? Which is the thing that makes me most jealous of everything you've ever done. But this is what you do now. You come up with really cool, funny ideas and you turn them into books and films and television programs. So after those 2 huge successes, How to Start Your Own Country came next. Mm-hmm. Is there ever points where you're thinking, I need to come up with something, or does it all just organically happen?
No, there are definitely points where you're like, I need to come up with an idea. But that's the best way to not come up with an idea, because it's just, you just can't. You know, I'm going to have an idea.
Yeah, of course. It's like writing a poem, isn't it? Or you just can't do it to order. So you just wait for the moment, and occasionally you panic that the moment isn't going to drop, but you have faith that it will.
Yeah, and while it's not there, you go and do something else more practical, like a radio show or something that is happening that you can then pour ideas specific to that show into. So you're still working, you're still...
Something less mercurial, something which is a bit more formal and structured.
Yeah, exactly, and it's happening.
We should mention that Yes Man became a film starring Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, this again, just casually, that's right. How did that come? I mean, what you get a call from your agent saying you're never going to guess who's been on the phone or something like that? How does it?
When you've finished a book, they will, if they feel that if it's getting some buzz already just from the idea, if it's starting to get hot, they will then bike copies of the book out rather than email it. They bike it to various, or nowadays they watermark a PDF. Anyway, the idea is that you get a private copy that is traceable, and it gets sent out at the same time to lots of different studios.
Oh, okay.
And then they have a time limit to get back to you. And with Yes Man, I mean, one famous company, they tried to screw me over a bit, and we were like, well, you know what, we're just gonna wait to see what everyone else says, and then more. Different studios wanted it, but I went with the nicest people.
Fair enough.
I didn't go. I went. They didn't offer quite as much as the other people, but I went with the nice people who had acted brilliantly and who I really liked, and we went with them. And it was supposed to be a Jack Black movie.
Oh, was it?
And then Jim Carrey heard about it and wanted to do it, and that was quite an easy yes.
Of course it was. And are these pinch yourself moments, or
that, I think back to that time because at the same time you think, well, this might not happen. You know, I'd had it before where people buy the rights to something and it doesn't happen. Yeah. But you've already bought champagne by then.
Yeah, of course. And spent the money.
Yeah. And but I had a pretty good idea this one would happen, and it was a bit of a pinch yourself moment. But at the same time, there were lots of other things going on at the same time.
Right. So
that meant I couldn't enjoy it.
Oh, okay.
Because it wasn't the only thing going on. I was doing, How to Start Your Own Country at the same time, and I was doing some BBC stuff, and I was thinking about the next book. So it was a period of just sort of intense ideas.
Almost too much going on. We need to hop through the next bit so that we get enough time to talk about the new book. So you mentioned How to Start Your Own Country, which again was a project designed chiefly to amuse yourself, which ended up capturing the imagination of lots of other people. Briefly, tell me about Awkward Situations for Men, and I'm interested in the sitcom side of it, because last time our paths were crossing on a regular-ish basis, you were very casually developing your own American sitcom.
Yeah, and that happened because I was on my way to the airport from, I was in LA for some reason, and I dropped in on my agent, who I like, and he said, so when's the next book? And I said, it's a while away. And he said, it sounds like that's a while away. And I was like, it is, that's why I said that. And he said, well, sometimes we can sell just the idea of a column. We sometimes, we'll take something from Rolling Stone or whatever, and we'll turn it into something. And he said, have you written anything? And I said, well, I write a column back home for a magazine called Shortlist. And I said, I'm thinking about maybe doing a book one day. And I'd never said the title out loud, right, to anybody. And I said, I'm thinking of calling it Awkward Situations for Men. And his eyes lit up. And 10 minutes later, no word of a lie, this office was packed with men and women in suits who I'd never seen before, all going, we're very excited about this project. And there wasn't a project. There wasn't an idea.
Words.
Yeah, it was some words. And so I had to come back and I said to my publisher, I said, look, can I do a book called Awkward Situations for Men? And he was like, why? And I said, because I think I can make it.
I've just sold the film rights.
I think I've just sold the rights. I think there's this. And they go, well, yeah, okay. So we do that. And then in the meantime, we get a producer on board who produced Yes Man. He also produced Harry Potter, so he's a good guy to have in your corner.
Kind of knows what he's doing.
He gives Warner Brothers a call, so we get straight to the top, and I meet this amazing man, Peter Roth, who's like in charge of all television, and he just went, I love it. And again, it still wasn't a show. It was just a title and me talking about things that have happened to me. And so he gets his team in, and then we all go off to ABC. And every single meeting went as well as it could go. It was like a fairy tale. I was thinking, Hollywood's easy. Because it's next meeting, until suddenly I'm with the ultimate boss at ABC, who goes, I love it, I want to do it. And then he goes, who do you think should be in it? And I said, I don't know, that's kind of up to you guys. And he goes, I think you should be in it. And I go, okay, yeah, all right, yeah, good, I'll be in it, fine. And then suddenly I'm back there a couple of months later on a set with the director of Seinfeld, who's done 80 episodes. And I was like, there's a lot of traffic here, not realising that these were all cars that had been brought in for the thing. Walking around with my glamorous Hollywood wife, who we cast, and my crazy kooky best friend. It was better than that.
Yeah, of course.
But and making a sitcom, and it got down to like the last 3 or 4 that they were going to commission. It felt like this could happen, but it might not.
Sure.
There were questions about should we have done it, filmed it the way we filmed it, or should it be with an audience? We did it the way we did it. And then I got the call late at night from Peter, and I was like, I've got a bottle of vintage champagne here, and I've got a bottle of rough whiskey. Yeah. Which one am I drinking? And he said, drink them both. And I was like, okay. But again, it's not good about And he said, they want to reshoot it. They want to do it as a multi-camera Charlie Sheen style comedy.
Okay.
With you there, and they want you to have a baby in it.
Right. So it was getting kind of homogenized.
I would still have done it.
Sure.
Because it was fun.
Yes, of course.
But it just started to disintegrate at that point.
Okay.
And for a couple of days I was sad because it was so much work.
Yeah.
But also I was sad because I thought I had an answer either way. Either it's over tonight,
of course, yes.
or we kick off.
Yeah.
But instead, it was like, here's another year of work.
Yeah,
and
hope.
Yeah, and so when it did finally go away, I was just like, do you know what? I did that.
Well, you're in the shower again.
Yeah, I was just like, I did that.
Yeah.
We made it.
Yeah.
We went out with my 9-week-old baby.
Yeah.
We made a show. We cast it. We did the whole thing. I've got something weird to show him when he grows up. And lots of people don't get that chance. Yeah. So I was just like, I'll take that.
And yet these things, if they come off, you become one of the biggest stars in the world, potentially.
Yeah, which is weird pressure.
But it helps that you don't live for that. Again, this has emerged throughout.
Yeah.
So what do you live for, and how does it lead us towards Fuck You Very Much? Which, for fans of your work, would it be fair to say it's a bit more, I mean, despite the title and the subtitle, The Surprising Truth About Why People Are So Rude, it's quite academic. And you've gone in deep on this one rather than...
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I wanted to see, with all these things, with kids' books, with novels, with radio, with telly, I want to see if I can do something. And the only way to find out is to do it. And when you have an idea for something, you then think, what's the best way to use this idea? And if it's something you haven't done before, that doesn't mean you should not do it. That means you should try and serve the idea well. And this felt the best way to do this book.
To genuinely dig really deep into why people are so rude.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it baffles and confuses you as someone who, as you've explained with reference to your dad and your mum, it just isn't part of your arsenal.
I don't understand it. I don't understand why people go straight to it. And I wanted to understand. A thing happened to me where I was trying to buy a hot dog and the woman was extraordinarily rude.
It's a beautifully told story.
Well, it's a nicely told story with no hot dog at the end of it. And I went mad in my head because of it. Because I'm thinking, how did two people... It's a very simple thing. I want a hot dog. You're selling hot dogs. Sell me that hot dog.
Yeah.
I'm selling hot dogs. You want a hot dog? Here's the hot dog. That's the whole thing. And yet, two people failed to do it in such a spectacular fashion that it took an hour, and it took me being kicked out of a diner with my chains thrown after me, standing in the drizzle, going, what happened there?
Yeah.
For me to then write a 200-word TripAdvisor review that wasn't enough for me, because it was the culmination. That was the last straw for me, that moment.
Yes.
That was the last thing I could handle without having to do something.
To find out, to understand. I want to understand it.
And so this cathartic thing, a project, and it just happened. And so I thought...
But it's not just about you, because it begins with a fellow who went off to join ISIS and got really upset by how rude they all were.
Yeah, he was very disappointed. He fled a Morrison's in Buckinghamshire, and he was like, this is it, man, I'm going to join ISIS, all my brothers in the desert, it's going to be wicked. Yeah. And he got there, and they kept taking his phone off charge without asking. Sometimes he'd go to prayer, and he'd realise that another ISIS member had... taking his shoes, and he's like, that's not on. Sometimes they'd talk loudly at night, or they'd just stare at him. Or when he brought the food in, because he'd cook for them, ISIS were just really, they were like squabbling children. And he just expected better of ISIS. And he was like, you know what, they're rude. And I thought, that is brilliant.
That's bang on, isn't it?
Because it's like, we all have our own standards.
Yes, exactly.
Even if we're plotting the downfall of Western civilization through violent means, we still get annoyed if someone takes our phone off charge. You know what I mean? So we're all connected. So there's a fundamental, I suppose I can use that word with that, there's a fundamental desire to be respected. And
that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's you feel people aren't giving you your due.
I think that is...
Not you, but everyone.
Yeah, everyone. And I think that actually, some of the things, I was only thinking about this the other day, that some of the rudest people that we meet in everyday life tend to be people who have authority while maintaining low status, right?
Gosh, yes.
So it's the people you come across in airports, particularly in America, who tell you need to do something, you need to do that. And you're like, I don't need to. You want me to, and I'll do it because you've got a hat.
Yeah.
Or it's the guy in the parking garage who just barks orders at you, or the bank teller. These are all people who've got some...
that's a brilliant dynamic, isn't it?
They've got some authority.
But not status.
Yeah. And I was thinking about it just on the way in, and I was thinking about America right now, and all those people who for years have been forgotten, and who the world has sort of looked down on, who've been dubbed white trash, who've been dubbed stupid. They have very low status, right? But now they're in control. Now they've got power. Now they've got authority. So they're now using that power in quite an ugly way. Because I was talking to someone who was saying that power, we used to say power corrupts, but he thinks power liberates.
Right.
So suddenly we're seeing these awful things happening because the people have got the power to do whatever they want. And they feel liberated to do it because I am in control and I'm going to teach you and you're going to respect me.
Yeah.
And that's where respect comes back in again.
Gosh.
So we want that respect. Because I want to be able to buy a hot dog without feeling like, shoplifter.
Yes.
But there's an entire generation of Americans right now who are going, for years you've disrespected me. We're going to make you respect us. We're going to show you what our power does. And we're not going to listen to you with your tears and your snowflakes and your beta nonsense. This is how you are, a man or a woman in this. And it's very, we know how dangerous it is.
Sure.
But I'm trying to work out why again.
And your conclusions in this book, which John Ronson describes as a brilliant book, which is wonderful. If you're trying to sort of go a bit deeper than you have in some of your previous work, to get praise from Ronson is the gold standard. So what is your synthesis at the end of?
Well, I feel like the world has become narrower and coarser and angrier for a lot of different reasons. There's many things that have happened just culturally that we can point to, things that we engage in every single day. I think that we have to call rudeness out when we see it. I think that we have to... The only way to have a civilization is to be civil. Now I should just start shouting obscenities out.
I don't know if anyone can hear the Hare Krishnas that have just started singing in the background as we reach this point.
Wouldn't it be great though if I'm going, you're going to be civil, and I lose it. Just start chucking stuff at them.
And that is actually, I risk of sounding pretentious, it's kind of a unifying theme of all your work. Are you aware of unifying themes, or is it just a happy coincidence that because you indulge such personal enthusiasms, they end up sometimes speaking to the same truths?
I think it goes back to that thing about a voice and finding a voice and using the voice to say the things you want to say.
Yes.
I didn't realise that I have been writing about this for a decade.
You have, haven't you?
But I didn't realise.
Right, that's kind of what I mean.
Someone else had to point it out to me.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise. And yet it makes complete sense now. And this is my sort of... angry, happy shout. Although you'll be pleased to know that recently I was in LA again and I bumped into Peter Roth, the guy that phoned me in the limo. And he said, come in tomorrow. And I went in and he said, what have you been working on? And I told him the hot dog story. That's all I told him. And he went, I want to make a sitcom. So I sold the rights. But again, I was like, this isn't really a show yet, is it? He's like, it's fine. He's like, we'll work it out. So
you're back in the game.
So I'm back in the game, but with this, and again, I've got to work out what on earth it's going to be.
Oh, there's enough stories in there. Very, very, very briefly, because we're out of time. It wasn't called Fuck You Very Much when it was published in Harper.
No, it wasn't.
I never say the F word when I'm broadcasting, so I really enjoy it.
I know, me too.
Why not? What happened?
Why is it called this now?
Yeah, well, why wasn't it called this then?
It was always on my computer. There's a brilliant thing about writing books, which is that, as you know, because you're writing one, it's on your computer and there's no other copy. That's it. It's yours. Yeah. You're the only person with access to it. You're the only person who can change it. One day you click send and all that changes. Gosh. So in that moment, when you click send, you got to be sure that this is, you'll have chances, but it's pretty much, that's what you're going to do. And it was always, fuck you very much. Because I thought it's a powerful title. People won't expect it from me, but it's how I feel.
Yeah.
And then we got to talking about how it will look in bookshops and what supermarkets might take it, and all the practical things, the boring stuff about that, and also how am I going to talk about it on the one show?
Or Loose Women.
So we called it I Can't Believe You Just Said That. And it was a very sort of exactly. And it was the wrong look. And then it came out in America and they went, why didn't you call it Fuck You Very Much? And so they called it F You Very Much.
Right.
And then we thought, yeah. So we put it back, and I'm much happier with that. Although I did go on Loose Women to talk about it. I'll tell you how they say it on Loose Women. They don't say it, and they don't even show you the book. So I did 2 days of interviews, and not one person mentioned the name of the book.
Fuck You Very Much.
There it is.
Is out now in all good bookshops. Danny Wallace, what a star.
Thanks, James.
Thank you, mate.
Oh, can I also say, it's very important to say this, I liked you before it was cool to like you. Like 2004, 2005. I texted into your show as well.
Yeah,
sometimes you'd read it out.
I would. I was starstruck.
Yeah, and now look at it.
Yeah, monster. Hello, I'm James O'Brien. Thank you for watching this episode of Unfiltered. Not only is there plenty more where that came from, but there's plenty more to come as well. So make sure you subscribe to Unfiltered and put yourself at the front of the queue for all forthcoming interviews.